Hello, Truth Warriors, and welcome back to the Atlantic Underground podcast. Now, before I get started, and I'm sure that my guest here will agree, 2025 is an opportunity to protect yourself. And we work closely here with Miles Franklin to bring you the best prices on silver and gold. And if you do want that, go to milesfranklin.com to check out the products that they've got, or email info@milesfranklin.com. And if you do use the VIP code that we give out, which is AU, which is funnily enough the atomic sign for gold, but it's also the initials of the Atlantic Underground. Yeah, if you use that code AU, they're going to look after you. You're going to get a better price than what you actually see on their website. So if people want to monopolize on that and make sure that they get the silver and gold they need. We also did an interview with Andy today, and you're going to see the reasons why it's probably more important in 2025 to protect yourself moving forward. Now, it's a pleasure to have my great friend with me today, Lava. It's the first interview that we've done this year, and certainly what looks to be a volatile and crazy time moving forward. But Lava, as always, on a daily basis with her fantastic YouTube channel, helps me navigate what's going on, and a lot of the information that I put out on Facebook, on my social media profile, actually comes from Lava. So I have to give her credit for the information that she puts out on a daily basis. If you're not familiar, go and check out Lava on YouTube. She puts out the most incredible reports every morning, telling us what to expect financially and economically, as well as many other areas, reaching into health and many other things. So, Lava, it's incredible to see you again. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well, and this is always an honor and always a pleasure to be with you. Thank you so much again, truly.
Oh, no, no, this works both ways. It's great. I love having you on. You inspire me and moving forward. We were supposed to have Greg Manorino with us today as well. Unfortunately, Greg is having internet problems. He's not been able to do a lot of lives this week. Hopefully, he did mention to me that he'd be getting that sorted out on Saturday, and hopefully we'll touch base again soon. But let's start with something that is probably on a lot of people's radars at the moment. Let's start with Canada. Now, we're seeing a country right now without a prime minister, without a deputy prime minister. Do you think the timing of this is deliberate and purposeful? We're seeing Trump talking about the possibility of a merger with Canada. Do you think this was always the design of what they wanted to achieve? I mean, I go way back many years to where there was the possibility of an Amero being brought out with the merging of the European and American continents to become another powerhouse. Is it getting to a point where the BRICS nations are getting big? America needs to bring in countries surrounding it to bolster up its superiority as certainly a world global leader. How do you see things going? What do you think Canada's going to be up to? What do you think Trump's going to do? He's talking about Greenland as well. There's a lot in the mix. At first, I thought it was a joke, but the more I look at it, it seems more and more serious as we go on.
I think the Greenland thing to start with is very serious.
Yeah,
And just to touch on that, because that is kind of a smaller point, Greenland is also a strategic, the location as it is, because there's a large, this goes pretty deep, but there's a large entrance into resources that Greenland would provide. So going forward with that, I think that's not out of the question at all. They've already got it put in the works to where they're going to try this. And I think that Canada is another different version, if you will. With the new administration, with Trump coming in, there is a surge in the American nationalism that is growing, and is not only talking about dragging in Canada, but also having talks with Mexico. And
yeah,
aside from that, the whole, we want to rename the Gulf of Mexico. Well, what's the point in that? You
yeah.
know, the expansion, this is kind of a, he wants to go into this new era of expansion. And it's very possible this was set up a long time ago. I know that currency-wise and central banking-wise, it's kind of been looking like a takeover for some time. And
Yeah.
in the background, we've been watching a couple of things that have kind of led up to this. In particular, the largest bank there is TD Bank. And so if you look at what's been going on in the background of that, there is an overtaking that was coming in the works. Not necessarily with the country, didn't foresee that so much, but yeah, definitely,
Yeah.
definitely.
Yeah. TD Bank don't like me. I used to work for them, and being as vocal as I am, yet some of the management didn't particularly like my opinions and views, even though the majority of what I was saying came true. And
That was the problem,
that was the
I'm
problem.
sure.
Yeah, it wasn't their idea, it was somebody else's, and unfortunately, so yeah, we parted company several years back. Now, in 11 days, we will see Donald Trump return as the puppet for the masses, and the undying hope of the masses, tethered to the very tyrannical regime, think that this is the solution. Now, I can't say I was impressed by his first term because there was a lot of promises that weren't upheld. But will this be yet another Trojan horse, or are we really going places this time?
I don't know. Time will tell. I'm going to take the safe route.
Yeah,
Time will tell. I mean, I have my own ideas and opinions. I think that it's not going to go the way that everything's being put forth at the moment. But
no,
I also think that for his first term, to his credit, there were a lot of headwinds and a lot of things that he came into. I mean, for instance, if you don't know about the deep state, if you will,
yeah,
and you first come into it, that's a lot to take on. And I
yeah,
think that was the case for him, that there were a lot of things that weren't as they seemed.
yeah,
And I think that this second time he's got that behind him now.
yeah,
And that would lend a lot of strength. So does he have the possibility of pulling this out? It remains to be seen.
yeah. Let's hope so, because if we're all going to become the warriors and challenge the very systems that have been undermining us for so long, it would be great to all be on the same pathway to a far better life for humanity. But we're also very aware of what goes on in the wings and behind the scenes as well. And that, as you say, is going to take a lot to uproot and remove those very weeds that kind of creep into our garden of happiness, let's say.
Well put, well put. And all I know is that I know enough to know that I don't know.
No, no, that's good. Now, the crash of 1929 saw the Dow drop at the beginning by, I think it was something like 53 points. And that was down from 326, which is absolutely nothing. Today, we have the Dow showing well in excess of 40,000. Now, what does this tell us in regards to currency and stock values? And what kind of drop do you eventually expect to see?
To say how much of a drop I expect to see is that's a tough one to say.
Yeah, yeah,
And it's because we're on an edge up. And it happens when it happens, will have an effect on that severity.
yeah.
So we're trying to kind of build up to it. Now, going back to the incoming administration, what he wants to do is reshore a lot of jobs, bring a lot of manufacturing back, and the likes. Now, if he's successful with this, what that would do is that would successfully revalue and put a lot of underpinning, if you will, to the stock markets, actually giving value to some of these companies. As it is at this moment, they are severely overvalued by magnitudes, and that alone says that if the correction, if you will, were to come in the next, I don't know, month or so, we're looking at perhaps, we're looking at 40%, probably more,
Yeah.
just as a guess. If you look at the technicals and how much it can actually support. Now, in the old days, you would take a stock for the company that it was, what it produces, and then look forward to the earnings that it had. And that would give it the value. Nowadays, there's no such thing. It's completely disconnected. There is no real market, if you will. The only Market pricing for a stock is what they think the next person will pay for, which is, we call it the greater fool theory. And it's been operating on this for some time. Now, aside from that, there is the other side of this, which is we value the stock market in US dollars for the most part. And the increase in the stock prices is related to inflation.
Yeah.
So when things get more expensive, large portion is due to inflation. So when you're purchasing, for instance, a dozen eggs, it's still a dozen eggs. They cost more because of the inflation behind it. So I hope that
Yeah. I
brings
mean,
that in.
how overvalued are current stocks and what kind of monster bubble is still growing exponentially?
Well, it depends on the sector. Now we've watched technology stocks just go massively, massively run up. Nvidia, for instance, you've got a forward value that would take 30 years to pay off at the current pace. Now, but then again, it is technology. So if they come up with quantum chip, no, Jensen Huang just came out the other day saying we're 10 to 15 years away from that. But for instance, if they did and it worked, that would immediately put value into that company. So you have to kind of watch that as well. But if you take a typical manufacturing stocks and the like, they're so overvalued. They've priced in inflation for the next 2 years
Yeah,
at current rate.
that's it. Now, what people are seeing within the stock markets, we're seeing record highs in a lot of things, but are people confused with what the stock market shows in relation to the economy?
So again, there is a major disconnect between the stock market and the economy. They're not related. They used to be.
Yeah,
But when you look at the GDP, which is also skewed, now not only have they changed the way that they factor the GDP, but factored in is all of the weaponry that has been going to overseas, I'll just say, and because I don't want you YouTube flagged, but all of this weaponry that is being produced, that doesn't actually do any good for anybody. But it's being counted in as productive into the GDP, if you will. And on top of that, it's all paid for with government money, tax dollars.
yeah.
So it's not a business per se that is producing something good, for instance, farming, agriculture, that does kind of its job in being that engine for the economy.
Yeah. Now we're seeing the likes of Warren Buffett and other billionaire investors dumping stocks. Is this part of them playing the game, or should people actually take notice when they do this?
I personally think people should take notice of this. I mean, they got to where they are by being smart. He's got a rather large cash position at the moment. But then again, he's also still in a certain percentage. He's not totally out. He's not totally cash. And so what he's doing is diversifying his assets and being ready for the purchasing opportunities. I mean, that's what everybody does. When things go high, that's not when you buy. You got to go against. You got to be a little contrarian. And so I think that's what all of these billionaires, multiple companies, large companies are doing.
Yeah. Now, when all else fails, they always take you to war. But what would happen if war fails, and how far do you think they would actually go with this?
With the war,
Yeah,
I hope not as far as I think that they could.
yeah, yeah, me
They've
too.
really been pushing it to the edge.
Yeah, definitely. What's your opinion on the sinking of the Titanic? And was this more the opportunity to never let a good crisis go to waste?
The Titanic, the ship,
The ship,
my opinion,
in
it
mind,
sank.
bearing in mind what came after it.
There's a lot of theory behind it and who was on that ship.
Yeah,
And yeah,
I know.
there's a lot of interest with that, but I'll just leave that alone because that's not really I'm not really expert in that.
Yeah. And for all those people who are wondering what we're on about, I'm kind of hinting at the fact that those that were opposing the formation of the Federal Reserve were the very people that went down on that ship. And those that now own mega banks like JP Morgan removed everything off the ship, including his own personal furniture, before it made that unfortunate, fateful journey. So, and
Last minute.
there's a
Last
whole
minute they did
episode
this.
on, that
Yes.
alone.
Yes. But
But
I have to have tinfoil for that one.
yeah, yeah, no problem. Now, in an era where technology has exploded to become the dominant factor in all business and finance, do you also see it as the very Achilles heel that has become fragile enough to bring itself down? Should we have either cyber attacks, hacks, or just a grid down scenario?
Kind of yes, no. I think the larger factor going forward is artificial intelligence. And we've done a whole sector on this. This is a move going forward. I think it's also the largest threat. And the greed of mankind is the part that will bring that down. And if I may expand on that for one moment,
Yeah.
we began with the generation of artificial intelligence in some of the larger companies and seeing how this could benefit mankind as many times these things do. However, we were not the only ones that got into this. And initially they were speaking about safety, precautions, how this should be directed, where it could go, and taking all of these safety measures. Well, as soon as they found out that we're not the only ones that are doing this, we've got China's got their own version, and other countries, that it became a race.
Yeah.
And I liken that to the nuclear race,
Hmm. Yeah.
as well as the destructive power. I think it's even more.
Yes.
And so what's happened is now we're barreling towards this artificial intelligence, artificial super intelligence. So we're in artificial general intelligence right now. They're not admitting it publicly, and they're not letting the technology out to the general people, if you will. So that's where they're pretty much on par with humans. And artificial superintelligence is when they're smarter than we are, can produce more than we can. So that in itself is a major danger. But at the same time, they wanted this race to be the first to achieve this. And I think that it's who directs these forward that will make the difference. So I think that is going to wipe a lot of the other technological advances that we've seen.
Do you see, I mean, we look back at the dot-com bubble, and obviously that was at a time of a huge emergence that the internet was becoming the dominant factor in people's lives. AI is now becoming the dominant factor in many people's lives as well. It's a double-edged sword. It can be used for great things and it can be used for bad things. But do you also see an AI bubble possibly forming, and we have an AI crash in the same way that we had the dot-com crash going way back to when was that? That would have been in the 90s, would it?
The dot-com crash, right around 2000 is when that
2000,
one
yeah.
happened. Yeah, late 90s, 2000. So yes and no. If there's something of that sort, it's going to be in the NVIDIAs, in the chips, in the hardware manufacturing. I think they are going to hit a wall to where there was a period of time to where they could not grow enough for the physical dimension of it to support what was going on afterwards. I think we're going to hit that and have that a little bit forward, but they'll overcome that eventually.
Yeah.
And then to go back a little bit, because I do want to touch on one other thing. You mentioned a grid down.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of these things are self-healing, self-replicating. What I mean is they have already copied themselves off into offline drives. So as soon as things are back up and working, they just come back online. I get that question very frequently regarding Bitcoin, but it's going to also apply to artificial intelligence as well. So one of the scenarios is coronal mass ejection, CME, from the sun. And that could be massive because we are in a period of heightened activity. So that could cause mass disruptions. But I think, again, that would be a period where that wouldn't be total destruction. We would get over that. It would be awful, but we
Oh
would
yeah, I
recover.
mean, that's it. I mean, people don't realize. I mean, I think it was 1859. I might be wrong, but there was something called the Carrington event, which wiped out pretty much the electrical infrastructure in North America, certainly Canada. If we were to have something like the same level, which I think was around about an X10 solar flare come off the sun, um, I think the infrastructure, I mean, certainly cell phones, cars, everything today, which is so delicately electronic, would be wiped out. But also, I think what people don't realize is the likes of the transformers. It takes, well over a year for them to manufacture a transformer. Orders are always in for new transformers as infrastructure expands around the world. But if these transformers for electricity are taken down, it's not just something you can go and buy immediately. There's a waiting list for a year, and I imagine that company, without the supply of electricity to build them, could set us back several years before we actually get a grid system back up and running. And that amount of time could cause a massive amount of harm to humanity should we go through that. And also, there's the concern that, the electromagnetic pulse that is created from a coronal mass ejection is also very achievable with a high altitude nuclear explosion as well. And again, as we move
Right.
into war, this also has to be something that people keep in the back of the mind.
That's probably one of the things that I think is the most disturbing, if you would, moving forward. And I think when I was looking into it, if such event were to happen, it would set us back approximately 10 to 15 years as
Yeah,
far as bringing the grid back up because of exactly what you had just said. And I think the more, probably for me personally, frightening thing is it would immediately take down all aircraft that are flying. And
yeah,
if you want an eye into that, there is a site called FlightWare, and it gives you a real-time look at the globe, like all of the aircraft that are in the air at the time, all of the satellites. I mean, that alone, that's very frightening.
yeah.
More frightening to me than going without a grid for 10 to 15 years, because we've done that before. But as you're saying, an X10 hasn't happened. The last time I think we had we were working on the telegraph, you know, didn't
Yeah.
have near what we've got now. So
And yeah,
that
and there's
that would be more interesting than I care to find out.
yeah,
Definitely.
and there's very few people that live in an area where they look up in the sky and don't see an aeroplane through the day. Which means when things start falling out of the sky, that's certainly a big issue. And not only that, the damage that that can cause as well to infrastructure as these things hit the ground and explode. Now, myself, when I was younger, I never thought I'd be sitting here doing what I do and talking about what I do. What did you want to do when you were a kid? Was it, have you achieved your dream, or did you have aspirations to do something completely different to what you do today?
Well, I was a little girl and I loved puppies and kittens, and I wanted to be a veterinarian when I grew up. So who did not?
Very good.
So I actually went to school for that and then, diversify. But I was a very quiet kind of person. If you had told me even 3 years ago that I would be doing this, I would say there's something very wrong with you. You don't know me. But
Yeah.
we'll change it. We've got to get the word out. But I went to school for vet medicine and ended up in microbiology and genetics. And that gave me some very interesting insight to a few things, and then ended up going through business and came through that way. So, yeah,
Wow.
very interesting
Amazing.
changes.
And I imagine that the microbiology stuff has given you an incredible insight into what we've seen over the past 5 years, to the point where you kind of questioned the fact that things don't seem to be exactly as we're told.
Yes, from the beginning.
Yeah,
So I was fortunate in that. Very
yeah,
fortunate.
no, that's it. Now, do you think society has been divided to a level now that we will never come together and stand against the common enemy?
No, I don't. Have
Yeah,
we been divided? Absolutely. As much as they possibly can, in every way that they can, whether it is race, income, you name it. But no, I have a lot of hope for the human spirit, and I've seen a lot of things out of people, and there's a lot of dark things, but at the same time, I think we can still stand always. It just comes to that point in time. And when is that? That's what I'm interested in. I
That's
think
it.
we should.
I mean, like you said, 3 years ago, if you saw yourself speaking out and talking and having a YouTube channel, you'd think people were, I couldn't do that. I think it's a time, and certainly this year, I would love to see so many people that find their voice, start to speak their truth, and realize that there's so many more people around them that are also prepared to speak their truth. And I think as people stand up in their own power moving forward, we can create the world that we really do deserve and really want to see, certainly for the future generations, my children and their children moving forward. Right now, we need to make the foundations of a better future. And I think if people do find the voice now, there's nothing to be scared of. We've got nothing to lose anymore. Do you think people should really start to stand up and speak out?
I do. And I agree with you. And I think that even more than the division, what they have achieved, particularly through this last pandemic, is an overwhelming sense of being alone
Yeah,
to people. Even if you're in the middle of a crowd, you're the only one that feels like this. And, you shouldn't question. And I think that is really the larger thing to overcome. And the more people that speak out, I think it can grow exponentially because every time somebody sees that, they can say, I'm not the only one that thinks like this. I'm not the only one seeing these things, despite what they're telling this on the television and all of the propaganda. They spend billions on the propaganda to make you feel alone, to make you think that you're crazy, and to make you think that if you think these things, then there's something wrong with you and bad things will happen.
yeah,
So we've got to counter that.
yeah, definitely. Back to financial sides of things, how bad is insider trading? And do you think the people who are involved with this should be exposed more so the people around the world know who is actually privy to the plans that are moving forward?
If they could be exposed, that would be wonderful. But as it is, we know multiple individuals that are doing this already, and nothing's being done about it. So, but yeah, definitely the insider trading, all of the Federal Reserve. I mean, it's to a point of being ridiculous, and we all just trade around that for now. But yeah, absolutely, I think they should be called out.
Yeah. I mean, do you find the markets are so manipulated now that the original rules to this game of play no longer apply, and it's very difficult to bring the best strategy forward for those that want to trade on platforms?
Well, I think there's a couple of things coming forward too this year. Again, speaking forward now, I was just talking about this on Discord, and we might have more than this year, but the true price discovery, once this is all being taken over by artificial intelligence, again, there's already algos set up to where they trade. They'll be able to, whenever someone does technical analysis on the charts, all they're doing is trying to find out where the buyers are, what the sellers are, and what they can get in between for that spread. Now, an artificial intelligence agent can run all of that in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
So that's going to take that aspect out of it. The humans, as far as human traders, the only edge you will have is understanding something coming forward. So, for instance, when you see, and this is really horrible, but the fires that are going on in Southern California and Malibu, as soon as an event like that happens, to extrapolate, okay, this is going to affect insurance companies, could
Yeah.
affect the power companies, it's going to affect, builders and whatnot going forward. So humans will be able to see these things forward, at least for now, and that will be the edge. But as far as charting and the technical, I think we're going to lose that within this year.
Yeah. And that's it. I mean, it's going to get to a stage where no longer is your financial broker advisor going to be the guy that makes the decision anymore, because as you say, the adjustments and the ability of artificial intelligence to make those trades on your behalf without any input, it's going to come down to whoever has the best system available to them, and they're the people
Right.
that you're going to allow to run your financial future in regards to investments.
And so this is going to be all of the larger, the hedge funds, the institutional, the retail investor is just going to be fleeced until
Yeah,
they're all out. Yeah.
yeah. Now, let's go 10 years into the future to 2035. What do you think the world will look like, or what do you hope that the world will look like at that point?
I have no idea. There is so much going on in between.
I know.
There's good things too, beautiful things that can happen. I mean, if we head on this technology track, it
Yeah,
could be really incredible. If you ask Musk, we're going to be on Mars. So
maybe, maybe.
I try to go about 5 years in
Yeah.
5 year blocks.
No, no, quite understandable. Well, even if we look forward to say 2026, um, it's unstoppable that the technology that's coming into place, we know that we're going to end up on a digital currency system. But would you like to see these digital currencies have a little bit of common sense applied where in 2026, the digital currencies are now backed by gold?
That would be interesting. But the whole thing about it, well, they're talking about quantum computing that would negate that. However, the whole thing behind a currency is it actually doesn't need to be backed by anything if it is managed properly. But the problem is there's so much corruption that that just can't happen. And they've designed this for a long time, as you know. And
Yeah,
they're doing all of this inflation is very purposeful because it's a way for them to act as if they're giving you something and then take it back without your consent. Inflation is theft, it's
yeah,
tax that you don't get to say anything about. And so tying it to gold, really to a physical commodity, if you will, just negates that.
yeah.
It enforces the management portion of it as far as the sound money.
Yeah, absolutely. Are we seeing a world now where the monopoly held by the majority shareholders, we're talking the likes of BlackRock and Vanguard and State Street, people are aware now that these powerhouses are there. But the fact that they're held by the majority shareholders means that everything we touch on a daily basis filters back financially to just a couple of big players. And how can this influence the mindset of the many people out there?
As far as understanding that everything they touch goes back to these, and behind the corporations even more, there's a few families that in the world are running the whole thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it would be my wish that people would go back to being a little bit more self-reliant, self-sustaining, go back to small communities. And that's really what humans, if you go, you know, to a very base aspect, what we were made for. We weren't made for masses. We were
Yeah.
made for small groups, small communities, and to work within that. So
Yeah.
I would like to see that again. I think that would be the best for the earth if you want to talk about going forward as far as green policy. None of that garbage works with carbon credits. But if you go into small sustainable groups and you understand where your food comes from and where your waste goes, those two things together could solve multiple issues.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, again, we were talking about the small communities there and the fact that we could become self-sustainable within them. And I think that's an incredible idea. That is certainly my vision for my future as well. But is the control of the very food we eat, as well as water, a growing concern for humanity? And how can we protect ourselves against this infiltration?
They've poisoned everything. They've poisoned it, and you have to pay extra to get food that's not poisoned, which
Yeah.
is it's ridiculous. But at the same time, same solution. If you can go grow in your own gardens, do your own sustainability, move outside of these poisoned, even the seeds that they
Yeah.
put out now. They control all of that very
Yeah.
purposefully.
Yeah. I
That
mean,
3M, Monsanto, and all of these companies.
they're horrible. They really are
Yeah.
horrible. But is the education of the general public important when it comes to protecting their resources? If there's, no market for precious metals or crypto when they opt to like a CBDC, do you think we could have a major problem there?
As far as not having something to trade
Yeah,
locally, or
and just, the fact that the general public out there, they need protecting because everything they own and everything moving forward, if the markets no longer have that precious metal base there anymore, and it just becomes crypto when we switch across to that central bank digital currency. Are we looking at something again? We know that history has always proven that every fiat currency, time after time, has always failed. Um, are people really needing to be educated now to make sure that they protect their resources and what they have? And should they be looking at certainly a diversity in physical asset classes moving forward?
I think there's two aspects there. And the first one I'll address because it's easier, and that is the store of your wealth. What you have worked for, being able to store your wealth. Typically, precious metals fill that void because you can't, store your grain for more than,
Yeah,
a certain period of time. It goes bad. So the precious metals are what you store your wealth in and hand it down. It's not necessarily anymore the currency. I think CBDCs, well, not CBDCs, but digital currencies, they are only supposed to function as a ledger. So as a currency, if they functioned as a true ledger, meaning they didn't get inflated away, and the amount that you had that you traded held that value, that would be fine. But that's unfortunately not the direction we're going. So that was the idea behind Bitcoin, was that it could function as that true currency
yeah.
digitally that could not be inflated, messed with, expanded, so forth and so on. So if that could work, that would be the ultimate, but it's not going to happen. So the next best thing is to get small denominations of silver, is my personal opinion, and things of the like to store your wealth in gold.
That's it. I mean, when I spoke to Andy before, we discussed about, where the potential of gold and silver will go in the future. Certainly because we've got large influences within governments and financial institutions now talking about the fact that we need to revalue gold. Tells me that certainly as we move forward to a digital currency, that this is something that may be inevitable. But I know you're big with crypto. I'm not. I'm a little bit shy with it, so to speak. But, is cryptocurrency in your eyes? I look at it possibly differently to you, and I know people within our group are very, savvy with what they're aware of and see it as an investment. But is cryptocurrency currently being rolled out as a Trojan horse? Is it the stepping stone towards a very controlled mechanism, the tokenization and the ushering in of that central bank digital currency that people will regret?
100%.
Yeah.
Now, there's different kinds. I was just speaking about Bitcoin as it was designed to be a true ledger. Now, people would be able to, it's trustless. And that means that you should be able to know that you've got so many units. If you have even, whether it's 10 ounces of gold, and you mark it down on that ledger that 10 years, 20 years from now, you're going to have that same amount of ounces of gold. Now, as a true ledger, that's one thing. But the currency that they're looking at going into, and there's a lot of speculation that it's XRP. President Trump just met with the CEOs of XRP, Ripple, Brad Garlinghouse, and such. So I think that's the one to watch necessarily. they're pairing with Chainlink. They may go with a different one. I don't know. However, it's looking very likely that they've got something like this rolled out. And not only that, XRP is older than Bitcoin. It was the original project and was designed to replace fiat. So it's already got the certain things built into it, if you will, to be that Trojan horse. They've got a pool off to the side to where they can fluctuate the amounts that they've got in there. And I'm no expert on this at all, but just a little bit that I've been looking into. So XRP, as far as the value, I mean, has a lot more to go. They're going to introduce some of these. They talk about Monero being the privacy coin because you can transact in it and it doesn't have your details. So for that reason, I don't think that one's going to be allowed, if you will, to go much further. But there's a lot of different things. And now when you talk about the meme coins, if you will, you know, start talking about dog and cat coins and stuff, I'm not so much into that because I don't see the function of those, and they're highly manipulatable, and anything that can be manipulated is said. But definitely we're going to have, whether they call it the EUSD, USDT, all of these that are coming out. There's already the e-yuan, the e-ruble, BRICS is going to theirs. It will move in that direction, but how it's handled will be the important part of it. And I think very definitely they're going to push people into this, and it's going to be what it is that we regret.
Yeah, I mean, I'm old enough now to remember when people were trying to get others into investing into pyramid schemes. And I remember being approached and laughing and saying, "You're joking." And then I remember people getting into property and thinking that property was the best investment portfolio they could have. And again, you know, the crash of 2008 destroyed the very things that people got excited about there. Is the excitement about crypto very reminiscent of the pyramid schemes and the property portfolios that we've seen people having in the past? And is it leading people down a path again where their own personal greed is blinding them to actually the potential demise again of where they're placing their hard-earned money?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are going to be wiped out because most are not even willing to look at what they're putting their money into. I mean, we've got some ridiculous things coming out lately, but you know, they're going to learn one way or another. Either you invest in your education and learn about it up front, or you're going to learn the hard way afterwards. I think there's a lot of absolute pump and dump pyramid schemes. We hear about them all the time.
Yeah.
And I think that that's moving forward now. With there's going to be, as I said, some that survive and will actually be functionable. And those they're going to attempt to regulate through the exchanges.
Yeah.
Bitcoin, they can't regulate on a personal level. So they're going to regulate it through the exchanges. As soon as you try to put it on a public, or those are the versions of banks, they're going to throttle it down. But yeah, some absolute pyramid schemes out there.
Yeah,
but
I mean,
much faster.
Yeah,
much higher, much faster.
You mentioned pump and dump there, which is probably a term that a lot of people are not aware of. We're seeing a lot of social media influencers, celebrities, even billionaires who people will follow for their investment tips, citing certain things as being the latest and greatest thing. But again, there's an ulterior motive behind their intentions. Can you explain to people what a pump and dump system is and why they should be pretty cautious if they are following somebody blindly down the road of investment, certainly when it is something that they can't afford to lose?
First off, if it's something you can't afford to lose, don't put everything in one spot. That's my first thing. This is not financial advice, and no one should claim to give you financial advice except your own financial advisor. And I highly recommend you look into that. However, looking into any one thing that they're promising you massive returns, there has to be a reason behind the massive returns. Okay, always look into it. That's my best advice as far as that. But what a pump and dump is people that get that greed. The market is driven by greed. And if they're telling you you can make 100x, 200x, oh, I listen to this person, they know what they're talking about. Look around and find out for yourself, because anybody now can create cryptocurrency. I could go right now on a couple of different networks and have out, and there is a lava coin. I do not recommend you purchase this, by the way. So, but you could put it out, and I could say, oh, this is going to be the next wonderful thing. So put in, it's only, 2 cents right now per token. So you can buy hundreds of them, thousands of them, and you're going to make 10x your money because it's going to be worth $1. So you'll be a billionaire. And then once a whole bunch of people pile in, sell it all off, boom, I run with the profits, as well as a couple of my good buddies that helped me with this. And everybody else has just lost their money, because that's where it goes. That's a pump and dump scheme, in short.
It's a Ponzi scheme, effectively, isn't it?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, but I think those are a little more advanced in the growth of it, but these happen so rapidly. I mean, they happen literally the speed of light. Within 2 minutes, it could plummet and
Yeah.
drop. So if you don't know what it is that you're putting your money into, be ready to lose it.
Yeah, I had a friend recently try and tell me that he found this great investment and he was showing me all the returns of what's projected. And again, I just looked at it, so I'm not interested. And he went and put money into it to only realize at the point of when he wanted to take his profits out of it, he was unable to get them out of the system. And as you say, with that pump and dump system, the very people that initiated the promises of these financial returns, and this is how they do it. They do show that this is climbing. So if somebody puts it into some kind of crypto at that point, they see it climbing and they're rubbing their hands together, thinking everything is great. But at the point when they want to extract the profit, they're unable to do so. They couldn't get the money out, and literally the very person that told them to do it dumped all their stock, took all the profit out of it themselves, and then as the value of that stock or the value of that crypto dived, everybody then sat there with the head in the hands, watching everything that they thought they'd made quickly disappear. And that is the unfortunate and scrupulous world that we live in this day, where people are making false promises or manipulating the system to extract the money and make a wealth transfer, unfortunately, on the back of many people. Now, I did miss today, unfortunately, and I do apologize because I normally watch you every day to see what's going on. Your report this morning. Was there any key points this morning that you discussed?
Well, funny you should ask, is this morning I did not do one because today the markets were closed. The stock markets were closed
Yeah,
for in memorial for President Carter. But I was watching, there's a few things because the bond market is still open. And the more, I think, important thing to watch since yesterday, as far as the markets, is the distortion of the currencies. United States dollar is acting as an absolute wrecking ball
yeah,
to other currencies. And this is, you were talking about Canada and Mexico earlier, but this
yeah,
is how we are wiping out Asia and some of the other currencies right now. The yen is absolutely struggling. It's gasping for air at the moment. And they're going to protect their own currency. And if they do that, you're going to see that in the distortions of the bond market, the whole yen carry trade, all of that. We're going to see that back. And that to me is frightening. Tomorrow is the last day prior to the next week's trades. And I think a lot of that is going to come forward now. We've got 6 days prior to the inauguration day.
yeah,
And they are not, the timing that they place, as you know, is very purposeful. And I think that today as well has a bit of that with it. So we'll be watching into tomorrow, will be a big one. We've got a lot of renegotiating that is being spoken of, and the whole thing with the political turmoil. The main ones to watch right now is Canada and then also Germany.
Yeah,
Is Germany
Germany,
having some issues? Because
absolutely.
they're the manufacturing powerhouse for Europe.
Yeah, and they're also the very financial hub of the European Union, and the
Yes.
money that they pay out through that European Union supports other countries like Portugal and Greece, who have been in financial dire straits now for probably close to a decade.
Since
And
2008,
yeah,
they had to get the bailouts. Yeah.
yeah, that's it. And it's crazy to see that. But you mentioned about obviously the the Eastern countries right now suffering at the rise and strength of the US dollar. But would I be right in thinking that the dead man switch that the likes of Japan and China and other countries across that side of the planet hold is they are the major holders of US debt, and should they choose to dump that onto the market, how would that affect the US economically?
Well, we got a little bit of a window into that a couple of months back when Japan tried to do exactly that. Now, Japan is a little different than the others because China has been dumping United States. They've been kind of winding down as well as Russia. Now, Japan is a little different because the United States still has a bit of sway over them with that, not just politically, but also in the trade. And we've been hearing about Nippon Steel and all of these, the trade being blocked, the tariffs and all of that. Those are all mechanisms to kind of shift this trade in the currencies. But they are one of the larger holders of US debt still, even though they wound down some of it. And if they need to protect their currency, they will step in and dump a bit of that. Now, the Federal Reserve is standing at the ready. And the interesting part is that we've watched these yields spike. That means there has been debt selling off and they haven't purchased it back yet. But
Mhm.
I don't put it past them to step back in.
Yeah.
Now, it's increasing, but I think if it hits that 5% level, that is a massively destructive level if it gets there too quickly. Now, if we wind up there in another 5 years, that's one thing. But if we end up there next month or even the next week or two, that could be very destructive for the entire financial system, the banks, commercial backed securities, which are failing at the moment. There's still some very weakened sectors there that are really causing some headwinds. So we've got Japan on that one side. We've got China that's been winding it down for some time. And we've got Indonesia, which just joined the BRICS as full member not
Yeah.
too long ago.
I
So
heard
now
about that, yeah.
they're a major manufacturing sector and they are now implementing some protectionist traits. Now, here's one you'll find interesting. Apple. Now, they've ceased sales of Apple iPhones there because
Right.
they've got a new law that if at least a portion of the product is not produced domestically, you can't sell there. So Apple put forth a proposition that they would do an AirTag factory, and they declined that, saying that's not part of the actual phone, that's an accessory. So you can't sell your phones here until you put some manufacturing here. So I think that's kind of a brilliant counter to the tariffs. They've got the
And
labor, they've got the cheap labor, they've got they've got the ins for all of the production, and now they're in bricks. So
right.
think about that.
And has this affected Apple stock?
That just happened. So
Yeah, it
it's
could.
it's taking its effect, I believe. Yes.
Now, with the market being closed today in the US, does this give the advantage to all other exchanges around the world that are not closed today? How does that work in regards to the way people trade and the way people work with the obviously the stock exchanges within the US not opening? Is it an advantage to others that are open?
Not so much. So they'll trade within the exchanges, but the United States stock market is the by far the largest and the most liquid markets. So it's when all the hedge funds are into. And what's going on with a lot of this is because the dollar is so strong and the yields are so strong, money is just literally flooding out of other markets into the United States stock market. So they're not going to flood out just on one day of closure. It would take more than that.
And what would you say the key influence is behind the dollar becoming so strong right now?
It's all on Trump coming into office because very nationalistic protectionism, all of this expansion that they're talking about, it's a literal wrecking ball because he wants to reshore the jobs, the manufacturing, and it remains, as we were saying, it remains to be seen whether he will or not.
Yeah.
But they're all pricing this in, and this is the reason that Trudeau resigned. And now it's going to be some time. He's still going to be in power for some time. However, all of these trades and everything, it just tanked all of the currencies because we're going to have now a larger GDP, or at least that's the thought forward. But it's getting to a dangerous level. But anytime you have a major imbalance of this sort, it's got its consequences.
I mean, I love the idea that the US wants to become a powerful manufacturer of products again, to certainly bolster up their position within the world. But is it too far now, the fact that we've had the likes of China become an industrial mega power in regards to what they are supplying the world? I mean, I look at the things that, Timu and all these Alibaba and all these different sites where people can buy things from China. And believe me, it will arrive at your doorstep far quicker than Amazon products at this moment in time, and probably half the cost. How can they even think they can compete against a country where the labor is cheap and goods are cheap when there's certain benchmarks set for the standard of living for the American people where they have to achieve a certain wage? How do you think Trump and the American economy are going to actually bring forth a manufacturing revolution within that country when financially it certainly doesn't look like it's in a position to do that because of the lifestyle expectations of the very people that live within there?
So I'm not going to say that it can't happen. And there's many people much, much smarter than I am that have been talking about this very thing. And they're all discussing this in the higher economic circles because this is a major step moving forward. Now, the thought behind it that Trump has put forward is that the tariffs are what are going to even this out. So if we put enough of tax on China's goods, it's going to make them more expensive so that people want to purchase goods locally from the United States. But if you talk about the disparity that we're seeing right now, the expense that would add in order to pay United States workers, as you're just saying, to their what they consider a living wage, would be massively, again, inflationary.
Yeah.
So the reality of it, as I said, I'm not going to say it can't happen, but it's going to be interesting moving forward. There's going to be a lot of bumps and kinks in the road if that's the road that we end up continuing down.
Yeah.
Because the fact of the matter and the truth is that China has this inexpensive labor that by the masses. So unless we go completely to automation or artificial intelligence, there are possibilities. It's going to be a game changer for certain.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And as we mentioned earlier, the possibility of a economic merger with the likes of Canada and Mexico forming a far greater union. Is this again to do with the ability to manufacture that? And have they got the likes of Mexico and Canada over a barrel now financially, where we're seeing costs in Canada go up to almost, well, it's unbearable for most people that live there. The cost of living is getting to a point where it's ridiculous. And Mexico, again, is seeing the cost of living for their citizens increasing to the point. Most people can't get onto a housing ladder. Most people can't even afford to go and buy groceries because of the cost of what everything is going up to. Is that going to be a solution for that? Are people, if they do merge and create this union between Mexico and Canada, forming this massive union of these countries, is that going to stop the cost of living going up for people?
No. In fact, from a financial standpoint, taking over Canada really doesn't make too much sense for the United States. They don't have main manufacturing. They do have some resources, but it just, I mean, the inflation that they've already kicked in, that they've got per citizen, their unfunded debts doesn't make sense. Now, perhaps they're thinking that it would even out with Mexico because Mexico does have quite a bit of manufacturing there.
Yeah.
A lot of companies have already moved there. They've got access to a lot of materials, not just materials, but also the shipping. They're in a much better strategic point than Canada is. So I don't know why they would want Canada, but other than to say they've got more of a landmass,
Yeah.
or to pull them into where they can't dissent politically, or maybe that gives them another opportunity to have an excuse to inflate more.
Yeah. I mean, Mexico itself, I mean, I notice it. I'm a car guy. I notice it more with the production of Chinese cars here. And we're seeing there's probably got to be maybe 10 to 12 companies now that are producing very, very good cars. And normally people will think that Chinese products are cheap and bad. But what I'm seeing here with companies like Chery, BYD, Omoda, um, these aren't vehicles that we're going to see in Europe and the UK, Canada, or the US, but I am seeing them in Mexico. And they are certainly ones to rival, dare I say it, Toyota and Honda, up even to the levels of luxury divisions like Lexus. And the cars that they're producing, technologically advanced, very high quality. It appears that Mexico have an agreement with China already to be able to bring in these kind of trade agreements. If they merged with the US, it would be very difficult for Mexico to continue those trade agreements with China. Is this something that's purposeful moving forward? And is there a possibility that with current trade agreements that Mexico may possibly join the BRICS nation rather than join what possibly could be a North American Union?
I've heard rumblings about possibility of Mexico joining with the BRICS instead.
Yeah,
And they can stay independent and maintain trade agreements with both if they would like to, but and I'm not as well, into their internals, but just on the trade surface, and I have heard that yeah, there is possibility
yeah,
of BRICS that they have entertained that idea as well. They've got a new president, so we'll see how she does with all of this
yeah.
going forward.
And it appears that it may be whoever dangles the largest carrot might be the one that wins through with this. But, and I go back now, let me see, must be about 4 years ago. And I had a conversation with my financial advisor who works for a company called Edward Jones, which most people in Canada and the US are probably very familiar with. And me being me, I'm sure every time my financial advisor sees the email come through that I want a conversation with him, he probably starts sweating because he knows that I'm going to put a lot of pressure on him about certain topics and subjects. But he did actually say to me, um, obviously Edward Jones tracks a lot of things that go on because the trends that they need to be aware of and the expert advices that they give have to come from a central hub. I remember him saying something about 4 years ago, which pricked up my ears and has always played on my mind to what they were tracking. And Edward Jones were actually tracking the possibility of the United States invading Mexico. And that now seems to make more sense than it did 4 years ago. They're talking about using force to invade Greenland. I don't think Canada would put up much resistance. But if Mexico did feel that they wanted to sway more to the larger carrot, being the BRICS nations, and the US felt that financially that wasn't in their best interests, do you think it could actually get to the point where I know that the US have already taken a lot of Mexico to become what it is? Um, do you think they would go the extra mile and possibly invade Mexico by force to bring them into line with what their true wishes are moving forward as an economic powerhouse?
I don't know, but I would hope not.
I hope not
I
as well.
would hope not. We've got
Yeah,
so much going on with our military as it is right now.
yeah. But yeah, whether that's sustainable and achievable, but I know they're fighting many wars on foreign shores again. Um,
I'll say one thing though. The physical wars that they're talking about and the physical wars that they're fighting, they don't care about the bloodshed, but they're mostly distractions.
yeah,
The larger fighting is going on with the currencies and the trades. They're starving these people out. The currency wars can do massive destruction. And in order to cover that up, they'll have a skirmish here or there. And I mean, not to downplay what's going on, because it's terribly sad in my opinion. I don't think any of it should be going on. However, they use that as the cover.
yeah.
It's not the main war, in my opinion.
Hmm. Yeah, no, no, that's it. I mean, there's a lot going on politically, war-wise, strategically, a lot that we're not aware of and certainly not privy to. And we can only make the best guesses moving forward on what we're seeing and certainly tracking the trends.
Mhm.
Are there any particular predictions that you yourself have for 2025 based upon what you already know?
Volatility. As far as the market's going to be, volatility is going to be the keyword,
Yeah,
I think, moving forward, because will we, won't we? The first step will be the 20th. And if it follows through, then probably have good times for our terms through spring. And then from there, we'll have to see.
yeah,
But definitely volatility. Precious metals, I think you're spot on with that.
yeah,
And community is the best thing we can do to hedge against that. We've got some good times coming ahead, but there's going to be some interesting ones first.
yeah,
So,
certainly. And if people wanted to feel secure in volatile times, which I'm expecting as well, one safeguard against people's wealth, what would you say the main thing is that people should consider as a stable safeguard during volatile times?
well, we speak about prepping in our channel, and other than securing your wealth in two methods. First, in staying wherever it is that you might be, but secondly, also in case you have to leave,
Yeah,
because things are changing so rapidly. And then the third aspect of this is artificial intelligence is coming into a large part of this. So just build a community if you can, and be, whether it's local or abroad, on the internet, even like we have,
yeah,
and we'll see.
certainly. Yeah. I mean, my project this year is to build a health and wellness community where we are moving forward so people have the benefit of health because wealth is nothing without having your health. Uh,
Agreed.
but, to wrap this up now, I'm involved with the community that you're involved with. And where will people find this? And how can people follow not only your work, but also get involved with the very informative community that you have put in place now?
There is, and I actually wasn't the main person for this, but a Discord group. And I love that because we do get the opportunity to where we can actually speak with each other, get feedback with this and other people with absolutely brilliant ideas. And we do cover health, because I couldn't agree with you more. Health actually should be right up there. It's number one,
Yeah.
because you got to stay healthy through all of this. Wealth is nothing without it. But you can find it in the Discord. I don't know if you want to leave a link down there.
Yes.
either you can email me directly, I'll send you a link, or we can put that down there because the more the better. And we've got a wide range of topics. I cover mostly financials, but we've got someone in there with the farm, grow, and prep sections. And then we've got you in there as well in your videos we post. So yeah, if you would like, that would be a great way to find us and just join in. And then
Yeah.
if you'd like to join the conversations, I have live conversations on Wednesday evenings after the market closed and after Greg. Unfortunately, couldn't make it today, after Greg's live.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's it. And again, the amount of contribution that we see from the very people within this Discord group is incredible. You know, there's things that have been brought up that have sent me down a different track of looking at things or changed my perception on things. And it really is a wealth of information and people from all around the world join in. What I'll do, Lava, I'll put your email, if that's okay with yourself, into the
Absolutely.
notes today. And should people wish to inquire and ask about this, they can email you and you can let them have a contact link to be able to join that Discord group and join in with the chats and see what it's all about. Because I think for a lot of people out there, and certainly moving into 2025, having this kind of group available and the information that comes out of this group available to them for free is something that people really need to consider moving into a volatile 2025 now. And certainly the way things I think are going to accelerate certainly after the end of this month as well. So it's yeah,
Yeah.
it's great, and we really appreciate what you do. And again,
Thank you.
I'll put a link in for your channel because your channel is my morning go-to thing. It sets me up for the day.
Thank you.
It puts me in the right mindset, and it certainly allows me to track certain things that I may not have been aware of before. And I do thank you for the contribution and the work and the knowledge that you put out for us on a daily basis.
And I thank you kindly for being a part of that community as well. I mean, your contributions are just amazing. And we've got some truly amazing experts in there.
Yeah,
You know, we've got biochemists in there. We've
yeah,
got natural healers. We've got some amazing people. So yeah, I urge anyone, come
yeah,
check it out. A little bit of off humor, but you can speak about whatever you would like as well. So we'd love to see you in there, Chris. Thank you
yeah.
again so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you very much again. I look forward to speaking to you soon. We'll have Greg on. If we can't get him on before the end of the month, we are scheduled now every month. Me, yourself, and Greg. It's always a riot when we get together and have a talk. And yeah, I'm looking forward to next month if we don't do anything prior to that. And yeah, watch this space, people. We're going to try and bring you as much as we can over 2025. So much information, so many channels. You're going to see the Atlantic Underground podcast. You're going to see that change into a new style website, which is going to be far more informative. Again, hopefully promoting more health products and things to make sure that you're going to make it through 2025. And that's really the goal that we all want for everyone around us. Thank you again. And as we always say here, believe nothing and question everything. And until next time, we'll see you soon, Lava. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
See you soon. Take care.